your tight ends room. It's very rare, it feels like, that group can be under the radar outside observers, but given the injury to Ben last year, Tyler, does it kind of feel like it might be from an outside looking in, but then you look at the depth in that room, now Gabe emerged, you probably feel like it's as good as it's been.
Yeah, and to say that here, because I think we've had some really good tight end rooms, but I think what you said about this group coming back, I mean, what Gabe Burkle really did in the last 4 games, I thought he was playing maybe as good as any tight end in the country, for both from a blocking standpoint and obviously his pass catching ability, and especially in tight windows, he was able to do some really special things. And you know, to lose Ben Brangler last year was devastating. I mean, just what he's got the ability to do, we know him at full strength is certainly one of the best tight ends in the country. You know, we also, you know, you also lost, you know, Cooper Alexander, you know, played, I think, in the Arkansas State game and then had season-ending surgery, who was emerging in the two deep, you know, getting ready to really have a significant role last year. And then, you know, obviously Tyler Moore, you know, losing him late in the season. So I think collectively, that group getting healthy, coming back, we feel really strong about what that room's got the opportunity to look like. And I guess if it's underrated, that's fine with us, but I think it's got a chance to be one of the great rooms in college football next year, and honestly, as good as we've ever been in that room, to be honest.
And then Caleb, just how tough was it to watch him have to rehab all the time while you're making history? The bench, you know, signposts all the way through the season, and he talked about it a little bit, but you know, the silver lining is the emergence of other guys. But A, how good is he health-wise, and B, how much do you look forward to having him back on the field?
Oh, I think it's a huge, you know, it's huge for Iowa State football to have Caleb back. I mean, you know, you're talking A players, you know, and a guy that was such a monumental figure for our football team in 23 and the response that team had. And just the offseason that he had a year ago physically, he was so ready to emerge on the scene. And, you know, I think anytime you have adversity, how you handle that is really big. You know, his ability to be a great leader last year, and I know, you know, Coach Haycock's talked a lot about that. I mean, how Caleb led that linebacker room, and, you know, between him and Carson Willich, I mean, you're 2 guys that were penciled in to be starters last year, you know, with Caleb and Mike, and obviously Carson and Will, and, you know, to have those guys go down, you know, really 2 plays into the season, and Carson being done after spring ball, that was tough. And both those guys are on a really good track back. Probably will start off the early part of spring ball limited in terms of what they can do. My number 1 priority is those guys being back to full strength by the time we start fall camp. And I think they'll be able to get some quality reps in spring practice, but my number 1 vision is I know what those guys can do. It's them being back to full strength, ready to go and compete by the time we get to fall camp. But just their leadership, how those guys led, I think when you talk about what made last year's team really special, unbelievable leadership at the top. I think those guys learned great lessons along the way. I think they got a chip on their shoulder coming back, which is kind of fun. And I think they've got a lot that they feel like they have to prove, which is a lot of fun too. So, you know, we're excited about that linebacker room. You look at that room, much like the tight end room, it's got a chance to be as talented and as deep as we've been in a long time. And so I think that'll be a big benefit for Iowa State football.
Hey Matt, when you come off of a season such as last year's, have you noticed just more pep in people's step or just more energy in the weight room as you guys go through off-season workouts?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I think all of us have come back a little bit ticked off about how the end of the season ended. Obviously, it's great to win the bowl game, but you know, there was some great things that occurred. I think there's great challenges ahead. You know, we know some of the challenges of losing some of the really talented people that we had on our team that obviously continue to do great things, as you saw in the Combine and the Senior Bowl, and yet also knowing that there's a lot of guys stepping into new roles, and like, man, can we sustain excellence here at Iowa State, you know, especially in our football program. I think that's something that, you know, having sustainable excellence has really been a challenge here, and it is sometimes because, you know, it's such a developmental program, and you have to develop it from the ground up. So I think there's just a great sense of I think there's a great sense of like not complacency right now. I think there's a great sense of urgency. I think there's a lot of guys that are trying to prove that they're ready to step into great leadership roles. I think there's a lot of guys prove that they can come back healthy and be the players that we think that they can be or they thought they could be. So this is it's kind of a unique offseason, to be quite honest with you. I think there's a lot of urgency. And I think there's a great sense of not complacency that's going on in the walls, which is a positive. I think at times we've been here and maybe felt complacency before in our past.
And with your 5 players who recently participated in the NFL Combine, can you just quickly run down the line and just talk about what their prospective future NFL teams can expect from them as they embark on their next chapter?
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing that's been definitive of all those guys is, what you saw from last year's football team is a team that showed up every Saturday ready to go compete to win the game. Whether we won or we lost, man, those guys, there was great competitiveness and there was a great sense of ownership. And, it's been fun to watch these guys go to the Senior Bowl, and all 5, they stood out, from Tuesday's practice to Wednesday's practice to Thursday's practice to what they did in the game. Man, hearing Jalen Knowles' name come out as the receiver of the week in the Senior Bowl, to hear everybody talk about Jaden Higgins and how he practiced, to watch Jalen Travis go from Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday, and then step out at the combine and be like the guy that's like, who is this guy, and then to see Darren Porter do what he's done both at the Senior Bowl and the combine, and obviously Malik's still working to get himself completely healthy, but I think showed out in what he's got the ability to do. And so, when I look at those guys, I think the first thing is you're going to have somebody that's going to have a chance to come in and impact winning right away. Their habits to what it takes to practice every day to be a pro. Those guys were pros for us the last year and a half. Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll, how those two practiced and competed on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and then what you saw on Saturday. Elite in the moment. You've almost seen it every step of the way. And I think if you're an NFL team, you want to see what I see on the videotape. Does that translate to the Senior Bowl? Does it translate to the combine? Well, now I can make an educated decision in the draft to say this guy's exactly what I think he is. I think when you look at Jalen Travis, you see a tough guy that battled injury right away here. His year was not easy. He comes in, he's injured, first 3 games of the season, doesn't get to play, really has to do fall camp in the first 3 games of the season, and then, kind of play sparingly at Arkansas State. And if you look at his last 4 games and you look at that bowl game and watch who he played against Miami and how that guy played, you look like a top NFL draft pick, right? And then you see him totally healthy. I thought he really came on the last 2 practices at the Senior Bowl, and then to watch what that guy did at the combine. I think he's as fast of a riser right now in the NFL draft as any of our players. And then, Darian's story, I think just again, does he love football? Is he committed? Well, man, a guy that's been able to battle like he did, how he played in the critical moments for our football team last year, and then to see what he did at the Senior Bowl, to see what he did at the combine, you see a guy that's got great competitive excellence. And it's rare to find guys with that length, with that speed, the ability to play those special teams reps. And again, I think a guy that's rising really fast and a guy that can impact winning in a lot of ways on your football team. And then obviously Malik is about his health. When he's healthy, videotape evidence you would say is as good as any safety in college football last year. And I think that's the biggest thing for Malik is, man, just his health, getting back to 100%. I think he's really close right now. And, he's a guy that's cerebral. We asked that guy to do so many things. He's playing like almost a 3-4 backer at times for us last football season, to a high middle field safety, and a guy that can really do a lot of different things for your team. So I think all of those guys, and, I think Jared Hufford's kind of a fast riser right now. A lot of people too. I think there's a lot of guys that, have got great videotape evidence. And I think what all these things now are like checkers of like what I see on the videotape is exactly, what I think about the guy. And I think these guys are doing a great job of checking the boxes here along the way before the draft.
A little bit earlier you mentioned the health status of Wilch and Bacon being somewhat limited in the spring. Can you just kind of take me into what it looks like for Daniel Jackson, Will McLaughlin, Kilberzina, Drew Surges, all guys who either missed significant time last year or returned late in the year through injury?
Yeah, I think Daniel had an Achilles, so he won't be available in the spring, but is certainly projecting ahead of schedule right now. My expectation is as long as there's not a setback, should be ready for fall camp and be ready to go. And again, I'm excited about Daniel. Obviously, his veteranness, his up and downs from a health standpoint in his career, huge to be back on our football team, and he has a chance to be a great senior for us this year. And I think really critical for us. Will McLaughlin, I think Will's at 100%. has had a really great offseason. You know, physically, you know, he really did his fall camp during the midpoint of the season, and to really do what he did for our football team last year at about probably 60% was incredible. So I think getting him back truly healthy, having a real offseason, physically being in a great spot, will be 100% going into spring ball, which I think is really big for us. Drew Surges, same boat. I think really has had a great winter. Back to 100%. You know, a guy that I fully expect to be ready for spring practice has really done a great job in terms of physically getting himself healthy and back ready to rock and roll. Kale Berzina, you know, probably a little bit like Carson, but I see him ready to go at full 100% as we get ourselves ready to go for spring practice. I don't think there's going to be much restriction. I think we'll have to be smart early, but I think he'll be ready to go for spring ball.
And then you hired Jake Landry from North Dakota State to replace Tyler Roll at the running back position. That's a school that you've gone to multiple times here over the last couple of cycles to hire assistant coaches. I guess double-barreled. Why were you impressed by Coach Landry? And then why do you keep going back to North Dakota State to find quality assistants?
Yeah, I think no different than building our football program. You've always tried to go to you know, recruit both high school student athletes, college student athletes, or a staff that knows how to win and be successful. And obviously, you know, the success that North Dakota State has had sustainable over the last, you know, 15 to 20 years has been nothing short of exceptional. And so, you know, I think from a starting point of the qualities it takes to be successful, that's a great starting point for us in trying to find a staff. I think Jake's situation is probably a little bit unique just because, you know, maybe a very different path than maybe even Coach Pauly and obviously what Tyler Roll have. You know, Jake only at North Dakota State a year as the offensive coordinator. You know, I think his background in Northern Illinois, you know, where they had great success, were winning MAC championships under a really good football coach and a really good football team there. I think his background of then going to Temple, coaching the running backs over there, being a part of that team and that rebuild. And then I think his coordinator opportunities, you know, at St. Thomas, you know, was a coordinator for 2 years. They won the conference as they transition from Division III to, you know, FCS level and really did a great job leading that offense, bringing in some different changes. And I think did the same thing at North Dakota State. So I think 2 for 1 has coached the running back position, has been successful in that. You know, everywhere he's been, he's impacted winning in a really positive way. Won a state championship in high school as a quarterback. I mean, and then I think at the end of the day, you know, he's got a big picture vision of offensive football too. So I think we were looking, how do we push that running back room, which again, I think we feel is really talented and has got a chance to be elite. But equally, how do you continue to help us grow offensively and be the best offense we can be? Those were really the criteria we were looking for, and Jake really fit it for us.
I don't think any 2 springs have looked exactly the same for you. What's the structure of the spring? What are the priorities for you?
Boy, great question, because I think not only is the dynamic of your team changing, but so is college football and its rules. And so I think that, you know, we've really tried to strategize that. And I think we're probably gonna have to take it a week at a time, to be honest with you, of how do we implement it. I think when you look at this team, you know, there's probably fewer guys that you know exactly what their ceiling is and probably have defined roles on this team. There's a lot of guys that you know have a lot of talent but need developed in reps. And yet at the end of the day, you want to have your best team with the limited roster numbers. How do you get the best 105 at full health to start fall camp? And I think that's a big challenge for us. And, you know, especially at a place like this where you're not going to be able to buy a roster and you're not going to be able to sit there and, you know, have 105 scholarships, right? Like you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. And so I think using spring practice as developmental opportunity first and foremost, evaluation of your roster, where's its gaps, how do you need to fill in then once those gaps are identified, how do you fill them in between June and July and August before that first game, and knowing your first game, oh by the way, is coming a week earlier than everybody else on top of it. So yeah, I think it's going to be strategic and different, but I don't think we can wholesale say we want to, you know, go too far down the rabbit hole. Like football's football, and so we're going to need to be smart. But I think the positive is, you know, you got both coordinators back. The system hasn't changed on both sides of the ball drastically. So I think you can at least know what you're trying to evaluate too, which is a huge positive to us. but I think trying to unfold the best evaluation plan we can, and being smart about it is really critical for us. So I probably didn't tell you anything, but other than, you know, it is a unique challenge. It's different. It's a different time, and trying to have the best opportunity to be able to evaluate our football team is going to be critical for us.
What spring mean or can be for Rocco and the wide receivers? You're not starting from scratch, so they're not far from it.
But you are in a lot of ways, yeah, right. I think, you know, again, the great thing is you have Rocco, so you know what he can do, and you know where you would like to see his growth happen, because you have now 2 years of videotape evidence of where's he at, where's his strengths, where's his weaknesses, and how do we grow from that. I think the other piece of it is at least we've recruited to a model at the receiver position that we know what's being asked of each position. And it is nice to have some of those tight ends back, and nice to have some of those guys back at full strength, that where you can start to really build that rhythm from now through, you know, obviously Ireland, to be able to feel like, man, you're ready to rock and roll and have great confidence, the same confidence you have with Higgins and Noel. So I think from our end of it is it's just timing, and to be honest with you, we've put very little of that the last 8 weeks. The last 8 weeks for us has been, man, bigger, faster, stronger. What are the habits, championship habits it takes in nutrition and strength, conditioning, all these areas, and trying to build our team up that way. Now, as we come back off of spring break, we're going to take it really slow and right, but really starting fundamentally being at our best. And it starts in that, you know, we just got done talking about the receiver room, and Rocco really getting on the same page and really trying to, you know, get great competitive reps. Just do it smartly and give our guys the best opportunity to create some momentum coming out of spring practice with that group, for sure.
Looked like there were one or maybe 2 position changes as you got ready for the bowl game. Benny, is he over at safety now full time? And then Kai Black, it looked like he's still listed as a receiver, but is he going to be a tight end now?
Yeah. So Benny is at corner,
Okay.
and you know Benny really took great reps. He got really all of bowl prep at corner, and you know, I think Benny's at 194 right now. I mean, he's had a really great winter. I thought he really had great bowl prep. You know, I think the last practice here had a huge interception in a 2-minute drill. You know, Benny played really good corner in high school. I think his last year and a half, some of his most impressive reps were at corner. And so, you know, I think always in the back of my mind, a lot like Darian, like I felt like this was a guy that, you know, if it didn't translate right away, probably is a high-end NFL corner. And I really feel that way. I think, you know, probably even played more corner defensive football than what Darian did in high school. And so, and obviously we're flipping it a lot faster than we did, you know, with Darian. So I'm excited about what he's got the ability to do. Yeah, Kai, I think from our end, just trying to find the right fit for Kai. I think Kai's like 241 right now, so you know he's a big body who's always been trying to kind of keep the weight off, and you know we've allowed him to kind of like go at it and put the weight on. And again, we'll kind of see where he rolls, but probably between some of that outside receiver and certainly tight end, you know, trying to find the right home for Kai.
Then the recruiting calendar kind of changed a little bit this year. You guys come right out of the bowl game, and then January you're on the road. What was the couple months after the bowl game like, and then February you kind of dial it back a little bit, and how was that for the staff?
Well, it wasn't super fun coming right back right in January and having to get back on the road, I'll tell you that. But honestly, probably in a positive way, you know, being here with our football team in December was a huge win. You know, I think the recruiting calendar positive piece of it is that, you know, you get done with the season, especially coming off the Big 12 championship game, being able to be back here with our football team, being able to collectively, where are we? Where are our challenges? How do we move ourselves forward the best way possible? I think it allowed us to get off to a great start when we got back out on the road in January. And, you know, I think we put our perspective on 26 recruiting, and we're able to go make a great headway. And, you know, I think Derek and his staff had done a great job already identifying. We had a lot of those kids up on our campus for games. And to be able to, for me as the head coach, to be able to get out and see, especially in our 6-8 hour radius, to see a lot of these kids in their home or in their schools and in their competitive environments, I think it was really big from my perspective of it, to be able to be there and be with our guys, because I think that's the thing that's probably missing. You know, in the old world in December, I would go into the homes of our 25 commits and be able to see them, and probably the frustrating part of it, that doesn't happen anymore. So you gotta really work almost a year and a half ahead and try to be able to get to see these young people that you believe in their environment. I like that because I think it helps you understand who you're recruiting, what's their family, what's their structure, what kind of humans are these. And so I probably enjoyed being back on the road a little bit in 26 or in January, just because it allowed me to get a head start on some of these guys. And then February was nice to be back here with our own team. You know, this team is young. This team is probably young in leadership experience, not young maybe in terms of its own experience. And I think the reality for us to kind of get back here and really be back around our football team and kind of be able to watch this group start to grow up together, it's been enjoyable. And so it's been a really good 8 weeks for us. We're excited about where we're at. I think we're gonna have a great week this week before spring break. And the first quarter of this season will be over, you know, and now you're heading into spring ball and, you know, another huge evaluation phase for this football team. But yeah, it's been an interesting calendar for sure, but you know, you got to grow and adapt with it, and we were able to do it, handle it and use it to our advantage in every way.
Matt, what are your roster numbers as you get ready for spring practice, and how might that change as you go through summer and where you need to be for preseason camp?
Boy, great question. You know, I think right now when you look at our roster, we're until our freshmen that are coming in June. I think right now going into spring ball, I think you're right around like 110 guys. You know, once we had those guys in June, you know, if all those young people would stay on our team, you know, you could be somewhere right around 120. And, you know, again, I think in April we'll have more clarity exactly. Is this rule going to what the rule says it's going to be? Is it not? You can imagine trying to be the head coach right now and trying to do it where culture and kids are most important, which is for me, that's way more important than any win or loss. Like, how do we treat all these kids on the roster? How do we make sure we do it the right way? The culture in our program. And so it's a challenge, to be honest. I think what we've tried to do is be completely transparent with all of our kids. And is there a chance you could or could not be on our roster in the fall based on the 105? You know, how do we set up a fair and real opportunity to evaluate our football team so you know exactly where you stand? And you know, if there's a time for you to make a decision that's in the best interest of you or your family, you can do that. It's not easy, obviously at a place like this where culture is really important. That's more important to me than anything else. So yeah, that's a great question, and it's certainly a good challenge for Iowa State football for sure right now. Yeah.
Hey Matt, good to see you.
Good to see you.
What can you tell us about a spring game, and how has your philosophy on what that event should look like have changed potentially?
Oh, I think my philosophy on that changed a long time ago, but everybody's just catching up to me. But the reality of that is, yeah, I think every year is different, you know, and there's sometimes that it's great to have a spring game and put people in the stands because, man, young people need that. I'm not scared about people recruiting our guys. Like, shoot, they've been recruiting them for the last 4 years. Our guys just keep staying. But the reality of it is I'm probably more conducive to like what's best for the team. What does the team need? And like even this year, like I don't know what the team needs. You know, I think it'll take probably the first 2 weeks for me to evaluate like, do we really need an open practice for this team to be its best, or do we not? Can we even have a scrimmage, you know, or do we not? Do we need a practice? I think all those things are probably way more important. I think this year is unique because we play so early in the year. That I think we got to be really smart about what that looks like. I'd say probably today I'm leaning and practicing and not having a spring game. It'll probably fry me on Twitter or whatever. But like the reality of it is like what's best for Iowa State football? What's best for our kids? What's the best evaluation plan that we can have for our football team? I think those things are really important. You know, I think the fact of the matter of it is, you know, that the spring game I mean, what is a spring game? Like, I turn on these games, I got watching like tag football on ESPN, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, that's cool, I guess. But the reality of it is you only get 15 practices. How do you use these to be the best? And how do you use it as the best evaluation tool for you and your football team? So, yeah, I think from my end of it, it's I've always had a unique thought on that. And believe me, there's some years where I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome to open up the stadium, and it's a young team that needs that to play in front of a, you know, a crowd and some sort of a crowd, I think that's big, but, you know, I think we'll make those decisions kind of based on what this team needs, and I don't even know if I could tell you right now what this team needs until we get out back on the practice field and really evaluate our football team, but, great question, probably some good hits along the way, so you guys can use them.
Feels like you've maybe been asked that one before
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah.
Last thing for me, what makes Iowa State the place you want to be through 2032?
Yeah, well, shoot, if I can last that long, yeah. I just think for me, again, is you look at this profession and it's changing, right? I mean, this is such a unique time, and I still think that I come every day to our facility, and when I look at the kids that I get to coach and what this team stands for, you're really grateful. And I don't think you can do that a lot of places today in college football. How I and why I got into coaching was this opportunity to impact young people, build a program and a team and a culture where kids feel safe and confident to come to every day, and have the ability to grow with a transformational mindset, not a transactional mindset. Unfortunately, our world is becoming so much more transactional. Can we survive? Can Iowa State football and this model survive? I don't know, but I know that's how I'm going to lead, and we're going to still build a program on that model, because that's what I believe in. And so I think the reality of it is I'm grateful that we have a president here and an athletic director that have believed in that vision, and I really appreciate that. And you know, I think what we've responded with is some great success and being able to give a team that our fan base and hopefully those of you that cover us are really proud of what they look like and stand for each and every Saturday. And I can guarantee you, that aspect of it will continue to strain to give that product what it looks like. But yeah, great question, and I think that question it's challenging because our what is around us is challenging. What's inside has stayed the same, and that's what makes you sprint here every day and be really appreciative and really grateful that you have kids that believe in that model and parents and families that believe in that model right now. So I really appreciate that for sure.
All right, thank you, Coach.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Pat.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, everyone.